Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Kikuchi Kan's play Father Returns, which I'm reading out of the Methuen Drama Anthology of Modern Asian Plays. So this play from 1917 is part of what's called the Shingeki movement, which I may be mispronouncing. I apologize if I am. But basically, Shingeki sort of aligned with what in the Western tradition we call modern drama, with a capital M, modern. So the work of people like Ibsen, Chekhov, Shaw, Singh, Yeats, people like this. People who introduced realism or naturalism into drama, and who took on social issues that were contemporary at the time. Kikuchi does the same kind of thing here in a Japanese context, which is actually not entirely surprising, because Japan is sort of, modern Japanese history is a sort of unusual one in the larger context of East Asia, because Japan had been isolationist up until 1868 during the Meiji Restoration, following American naval forces coercing Japan into opening to international contact. Japan sort of looked at what was going on elsewhere in the world and said, we need to modernize on the Western model while maintaining Japanese traditions. And so Japan modernized its military. It very much modernized its economy very quickly. And Japan became an imperial power on more or less on the model of places like Britain, France, Russia, the United States, and so on. And so Shingeki, this new drama, was part of that larger process of, in this case, cultural modernization. And Father Returns is in that vein of sort of challenging and navigating how Japanese culture would respond to the conditions of modernity. So the play follows the Kuroda family. The father, Kuroda Sotaro, abandoned his family 20-some years earlier. His choice to abandon them has basically left the mother and 3 children. So the mother, Otaka, and the 3 children, Kenichiro, Shinjiro, and Otane, has left them in poverty and social disrepute. And so they have had a very difficult life without him. It turns out that his life without them has not been all beer and Skittles either, but particularly because Kenichiro, or Ken as the family calls him, has really stepped up and he has put aside his own education in order to work to gain money so that Shinjiro, or Shin, his younger brother, and Otane, his younger sister, they can get a better education. And now the family is sort of on the verge of making it socially. Not to becoming wealthy necessarily, but to becoming sort of moderately respectable. The family, particularly Otaka, the mother, is attempting to arrange a good marriage for Otane, who's quite beautiful, and there's some sort of question of whether or not this marriage will go forward, because the family that she's trying to marry Otane into is of higher social status than them. So there's some uncertainty there. But that's the family's plan. We get through the early portion of this play very much that sort of social realism in the vein of people like Ibsen, some of Shaw's work. Think people like this who are very much interested in everyday conversations being put on in the theater. It's also worth noting this is quite a short play. This is a one-act play that in this anthology is only about well, if you ignore the introduction, it's only about 11 pages, which is very, very short for a play. So this is showing the influence of people like Yeats, like Lady Gregory, like Singh, who very much inspired Kikuchi in his dramaturgy. So again, we have this sort of initial element in which the family is concerned about their social status, they're concerned about their position, they're concerned about securing a better future for themselves. The dad keeps coming up, and Ken is clearly unhappy with this. He obviously has quite a lot of resentment toward his father, but the mother, Otaka, yeah, sorry, that didn't seem right for just a second, but yeah, the mother, Otaka, has really kind of come around to forgiving her husband for abandoning them. Ken clearly has not. And so things get a lot more complicated when the father shows back up. When Sotaro returns, Otaka is happy to sort of re-embrace him. Shin, the younger brother, is kind of like, hey man, we've done fine. Yeah, it sucks that he abandoned us, but he's our dad. Let's forgive him. And Ken says no. Now, this is an interesting and important point. Sorry, in the context of this conflict between tradition and modernity that's so central to modern, capital M, modern drama, or Shingeki in the Japanese context. Because Confucianism is a massive traditional part of Japanese culture. And one of the relationships that is sacrosanct in Confucianism is the deference due to a parent, particularly a father. In the Confucian schema, the father is the head of the family, and the father has a responsibility to act benevolently and supportively to the rest of the members of the family, and the rest of the members of the family have a responsibility of deference to him. This is Sotaro, when he comes back, seems to assume that this will be the way that things will work, which is interesting because earlier in the play, Otaka had said, when he were young, he didn't care none for the old Confucian learning, and we were always trying some scheme or other to hit it rich. So it's interesting that he comes back seeming to believe that he can simply resume his place in this family and that he will be forgiven for what he's done. Shin puts this idea forward in arguing with Ken, because Ken wants to throw his father out of the house and say, basically wash his hands of Sotaro's fate. Shin says, no matter how wild, raising its natural offspring is a parent's, and then we have ellipse points, And Ken breaks in and says, duty? Is that what you want to say? Do we have a duty to a wastrel who crawls back in his feeble old age? No matter what you say, I don't have a father. The father, it says here, he speaks as if indignant, however, it's anger empty of conviction. He says, Kenichiro, how dare you speak that way about your natural father? Ken says, you say you're my natural father? The Kenichiro you spawned died 20 years ago in the harbor. You abandoned your rights as a father 20 years ago. This here today is me, brought up myself. I don't owe a thing to anyone. And then a little bit later, when Shin again sort of makes this argument that they have a duty to their father, and that even if Ken wants to reject Sotaro, that Shin will support him. And Ken says, Shinjiro, when have you ever had reason to thank that bastard? At least he cracked me on the head once or twice, but he never raised a finger against you. Who was it paid for your primary school? Who was it that brought you up? It was me, your big brother, who paid your school fees. Have you forgotten how I paid out of my measly salary as a page? You know, your real father was me. I did the duties of a father. Go ahead and take care of that bastard if you want, and that's what I get thanks for. And so what we have here is this conflict between the Confucian responsibility to give deference to those above you in the social hierarchy on the one hand, versus this much more modern conceptualization of individual rights and responsibilities. We might conceptualize it that way, or the idea that someone like a parent is only owed deference if they behave in a way that earns that that respect. That social hierarchies should not or do not function automatically, but that they instead function on the basis of sort of reciprocity. At the same time, this is a little more complicated than this. This isn't simply here's tradition, here's modernity, because in the Confucian tradition, the father also has responsibility to protect, to take care of, and to raise a family. And Sotaro clearly has not done that. Sotaro has clearly failed in his Confucian responsibility. Now, Confucian thinkers, scholars, ethicists, I think, would argue that even if Sotaro has failed, that does not mean that Kenjiro, is that right? That doesn't sound right at the moment. Kenichiro, sorry. That doesn't mean that Kenichiro is relieved of his Confucian responsibility to be deferential to his father. And so here, even the tradition is unclear. It's complex in a way that I think the play really capitalizes on as a way of sort of raising questions about the role of this tradition. But the other thing is that this play is not a sort of simple rejection of tradition, where Kenichiro is sort of content to just say, no, you have abdicated your position as head of this family, and that is all. Because at the end, the mother, it says here, pleading, says, Kenichiro. Atane says, Ken. There's a tense pause. Ken says, Shin, go and call Dad back. Shin leaps out the door. The other three wait, steeped in tension. Shin comes back, his face ashen. Shin says, I didn't see him down the street to the south. I'm going to look to the north, so you come too, Ken. Ken, shocked, says, you didn't find him? How could you not find him? And the two brothers dash madly out. End of the play. So, even Kenichiro, who is the most overt figure of modernity, who rejects the simple and straightforward traditional conception in which he has a responsibility to his father. At the end of the play, he nonetheless changes his mind. He wants to call back his father, and what exactly that would have involved is not 100% clear, but it is clear that this is a reconsideration of his position and some sort of compromise or middle ground with tradition.